We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Back at you Monday night again. Co-host Will Miles at Read Reaction, readreaction.com. Follow him on social media at Will Miles SEC. And, well, we can go many places tonight. My friend, recruiting on fire. It continues on this Monday as well with Hylton Stubbs, the Jacksonville product, one of the top safeties in the country, committing to the Gators, flipping from Miami. Got a win over FSU to talk about. A lot of momentum on and off the field for the Gators.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, we need to tell Napier to slow down a little bit because, we've got the game to talk about. We've had recruiting to talk about now, like the last 3 weeks. You've had videos of all the recruits to throw up there. The episodes are going for an hour and a half because we got so much to talk to. And you know what's going to happen is in like the middle of June, we're going to be like, oh God, what are we going to talk about this week? What is there to talk about?
Hopefully it's like the summer, a couple of summers ago when there's commits left and right in the summertime as well.
We'll see. And I guess I shouldn't get greedy. I shouldn't tell Napier to slow down. Keep signing him, buddy. Keep signing him. Bring him in, and we'll talk about it here because it's obviously better than where we were a few weeks ago. And look, we'll talk about where Florida sits and holistically, but also given what we've seen over the last few weeks. And then certainly it's always nice when you beat your rival. Don't take that for granted, certainly after the last few years. So got to enjoy it when you get it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we'll do that. I didn't tell you this, but we'll go do our over-unders next week. So we'll have the bowl game to kind of look at, and we'll take a look back at our over-unders. And, Will, some homework for me too, and I know you'll do it anyway. I just want to stat compare too, because we know Florida got a whole lot more turnovers this year, a lot more sacks this year on the defensive side of the ball, the explosive plays on offense. So I think, we'll let the season rest a week. We'll talk about the FSU game. And look, the over-unders are going to be weird because of the whole Mertz, Lagway, all that kind of stuff. So some of them are just, it doesn't really matter. You can't really.
Not for me.
That's true. I took the injury route. I was like, well, I'm not going to play the injury thing. But, yeah.
I just thought he'd flip halfway through the year and have to play him. So.
Well, that's true, too.
Man.
Either way, it happened weird. So the over-unders are going to be a little bit weird next week. But
hey, look, you could have gone to Vegas and bet against me for the last 2 years and done really, really well. So I'm going to gloat this year that I got a few right next week. So we had like an over-under on Lagway's passing yards. It was like 500. And I think I said something along the lines at the time of, well, he's probably going to play a lot against Samford. Little did I know that he'd throw for 500 yards against Samford. So obviously in a good mood after you beat Florida State, man. It's good to get those sorts of wins.
For sure. So everybody hit that like button, subscribe right here on Gators Breakdown, but of course, right here on YouTube, smash that like on your favorite podcast platform. You can subscribe there, right here on YouTube, all that good stuff. Hey, Junior, sending a little donation in. Thank you, Junior, as he says, for putting in the work. So that's what we do here, of course, out here on Gators Breakdown. But hey, a couple comments that's got me kind of laughing here. Robert Guagliardo, has they've been hanging out with the gymnastics team. All these flips. There we go. We got to put it together there.
My mind went to Golden first, so that just tells you what.
I'm not gonna lie. Mine did too. But I figured it out.
Allegedly.
Casual Carolina Fishing does say, yeah, his flipping technique does seem improved. I think I had to see another comment before I got off the Golden thing as well. So, oh man. So Tom Duquette says someone let the recruiter win a couple. And Navarro says it's great to be a Florida Gator. Corey Green, Jesus, finally. So yeah, a lot of exciting news, especially on the recruiting trail lately for the Gators. It really, really continued here on this Monday. We're kind of hearing about this one would happen on Monday evening, Monday afternoon, Monday evening, and it happened. So good work there by the staff. We'll certainly get into the commitment of Hilton Stubs, but hey, a lot of interaction, of course, on the Gators Breakdown Plus Discord. You can get access. Link is in the description. some new members there. They're sharing their appreciation. I put it on Twitter earlier today. They were asking why they didn't join sooner. So, hey, go have some good conversations right there on the Discord. We have chats there all the time as well. All that good stuff. Gators Breakdown Plus link is in the description to join. So, all right, well, let's get to it, man. Certainly lots and lots to discuss on the recruiting front, and then we'll look back at the FSU game. But let's take a look at it, everybody. We got to commit, and this one is safety. Hilton Stubbs from the 904 Jacksonville, playing at Mandarin High. 6'1", 190-pound 4-star, flips from Miami. One of the top players, one of the top safeties in the country. 24/7 Sports Composite ranked Stubbs as the 57th overall player in the country and the 5th ranked safety in the country. The On3 industry rankings, very similar. 58th overall player there and the 4th ranked safety in the country. Go back to the spring, and it looked Florida. Florida was sitting in a good spot. Florida Stubbs come together, visits to campus, but Stubbs had a surprising commitment kind of out of nowhere to USC. And then after some summertime visits to USC and Miami and Florida, Stubbs decommitted from the Trojans in late June to commit to Miami on July 4th. Here we are 5 months later, and the Jacksonville product flips to Florida right before early signing day. And this is another one where uncertainty around Billy Napier kind of held it at bay. But once the vote of confidence came, some wins came, the late season surge for the Gators, and those wins happened. There was a new buy-in towards Florida from Stubbs. Players on the roster in this class, NIL, a positive direction for Florida that they find themselves in. It all comes together for this to happen. Felt like Florida should have been the place all along, but things had to fall into place. So, let's go pull up some highlights right quick as well, right here on Stubbs, and we'll kind of get into some analysis of Stubbs while we take a look at these highlights. Here's what he told Gators Online, though, about his flip. He goes, after an amazing visit to the University of Florida on Sunday, I have decided to decommit from Miami and commit to the Gators. Stubbs sent Gators Online via DM. The main reason for this decision is my belief in the football program and the incredible opportunity to compete for a national championship. Coach Billy Napier's vision, leadership, and genuine approach stood out to me, and I am confident that he's building something special in Gainesville. I'm excited to play for a coach who prioritizes development both on and off the field. Go Gators. So in this season, in 11 games, Stubbs produced 54 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 4 passes defended, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery. Last season in 2023, he helped Mandarin reach Florida's 4M title game. In 14 games, he is credited with 97 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 6 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, 3 fumble recoveries, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. 2 seasons ago in 2022, in 10 games, he totaled 84 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 picks. One was a pick 6, and a pass breakup while at Oakleaf. And it competed in the Florida's 4S classification there. And in 2021, his freshman season, he had 51 tackles in 10 games, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 interceptions. So as for his career, 286 total tackles, 3.5 sacks, 12 interceptions. Back in June, Andrew Ivins of 24/7 Sports offered this scouting report: well-rounded safety prospect that can defend the pass and the run. Added some good mass between junior and senior seasons and doesn't appear to be done maturing. Has experience working in a variety of different alignments and can likely do the same at the next level, as he's a spirited competitor in the box and alert in coverage. Strikes people as a tackler, oftentimes exploding through the hips. Tracks the football well on the back end and has the ball skills to come down with takeaways. Isn't the type of defender that's going to win a ton of foot races, but has short area quickness to correct some mistakes. Projects as a potential multi-year power impact defender at the Power 4 level that can add value in a variety of different ways, as he can match tight ends, cut down run lanes, and get home on the blitz. Likely to find most success in an aggressive scheme that wants to move him around and put him in the position to make plays. NFL upside with physicality. And then Charles Power of On3 offers, Hilton Stubbs is a big frame, physical, instinctive safety who has a knack for being around the ball. He's one who I think finds a way to make plays in a multitude of ways, and I think probably projects as a versatile safety, but ultimately one who I think could be more of a strong safety type as he continues to fill out. I've seen him in person several times, and I think he projects to be a kind of physically imposing safety who can defend the run, but definitely has some ball hawking abilities. So, Will, right here, all in all, Stubbs is a rangy, athletic, hard-hitting safety. Gators getting a good one here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, you got the 57th ranked player overall in the country, the 5th ranked safety, the 8th ranked player in the state of Florida. That to me is the key. Really, when you look at all the recruits, for the most part, the guys we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, is they're Florida guys. Florida is finding a way to keep the guys who are highly ranked in the state, and Stubbs is a big part of that. Obviously, safety is a place of need for Florida. Their defense has not been good for about the last 6 or 7 years against the pass, and so anytime you can bring in an elite safety, that's a good thing to do. Now, from a ranking perspective, Kamari Wilson a few years ago, one of the guys in Napier's first class, had a ranking very, very similar. You look at Stubbs, he's 6'1", 190. You look at Jordan Castell, he's listed 6'2", 220. So when they talk about filling out at the safety position, that's what they're talking about, right? 190 ain't going to get it done in the SEC. You're going to end up one of those. I mean, and I'm glad he wasn't scared away by the fact that every defensive back we've had this year has been on the injury report over the course of the entire season. But certainly I think he's seen that the guys who've gotten an opportunity have been able to step in and have known the scheme well enough to be able to contribute. And so there's probably some opportunities for early playing time here. And even if there's not immediate early playing time, there's going to be an opportunity for somebody back there who can be a difference maker, especially if somebody who can come up and make a stop against the run. So the filling out part and he put on good weight between his junior and senior year are the two things that I sort of look at, when you think about what might differentiate him. When you're looking at these highlights that you've got up here, there are a few times there where he looks a little bit small. And I think you put on 15, 20 pounds, all of a sudden that's no longer a concern. Certainly, that's something that you hope he's able to do during the offseason. And he comes into fall camp and is sitting there in that 200, 210 range. And then you got a guy who's got the ability to lay the wood, but also got some ball skills, because you can see that in the highlights as well.
Yeah, certainly. Look, even a highlight there where he blocked an extra point. So, certainly a playmaker. And I guess, of course, it's high school, so it is a little bit different. But you talk about the weight, Will. Certainly, it doesn't hold him back. He wants to go attack. He wants to make the tackle, and you hope as he does fill out that he, continues to play with that same aggression. His head coach, Toby Bullock, told On3, Will, quote, "A lot of people up here in Jacksonville look at him as a thumper, but his greatest gift is probably his range. He is a true full field safety. If you're in a cover 1 or a cover 3, he can cover so much ground quickly. And when you're on offense, you tempo your passes by saying 1 ball, which is a lightning bullet, a 2 ball, which is a nice arch, or a 3 ball, which is pretty high. If you throw a 3 ball on Drake Stubbs, he's going to get it. You just can't do those type of throws on him, because he's going to have too much time to make up ground and get there. Drake is a very personable person. If you build a relationship with him, he will do anything. He doesn't have bad days. He doesn't have a bad attitude. He loves practice. He loves to play in the game. There's no one that likes to practice more than Drake. He loves the game of football. And if he gets with a coach that he buys into, his ceiling will be as high as he wants it to be. So Stubbs has already proven his ability in zone coverages, but Bullock says he wants to see him continue improving man-to-man situations. Bullock said they typically ask Stubbs to play a rover type of role where he can drop into the box to defend the run, roam the middle of the field, and take away various routes and 2 safety looks, and hasn't asked him to lock up many receivers one-on-one. Bullock acknowledged Stubbs will likely eventually be asked to play man coverage at the next level, although he said his specific role could likely depend on a college defense's needs.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, the cover 1 and the cover 3 part of that is the thing that I look at and start salivating, or listen to and start salivating. Because Florida has been playing cover 2 to protect their safeties all year. All year they've been playing cover 2 to protect their safeties, because they haven't
and it didn't start out that way.
Yeah, they haven't been able to trust him back there, right? Yeah. And so a full field safety is something that Florida right now does not have. Now, You might make an argument that Triquez Bridges was about as close as they got to that, but he has some limitations too. I think he's a really good tackler, and when he moved out to corner, actually did a really nice job there. But when you're relying on that guy, on Bridges, as opposed to Asa Turner, as opposed to DJ Douglas, as opposed to Jordan Castell, to be sort of the next guy to take a step up, Florida was really limited in terms of what they could do on defense, and that caused problems from time to time, especially against some more elite teams. So having a guy who's got those skills, you think about the Reggie Nelsons of the world who are back there, and those are what we're talking about when we're talking about full field safeties. Now, Stubbs to be a Nelson or be a Sean Taylor, that's probably projecting a little bit more than we should, but that's the idea, right? Is that you have a guy back there who you can rely on, who's going to be able to cover up holes in your defense because he's got the range to go knock the ball down, even if he takes a false step in the wrong direction. Even if somebody sends double posts at the midfield safety, he's got to make a choice. Does he have the ability to rotate off when the quarterback decides to throw it to the guy that he decided not to guard and get back if the quarterback floats it a little bit? For years, Florida's had defensive backs out there who, when there's been a high point, when there's been a ball that the receiver and the DB went up to get, it was almost always the receiver who was getting it, right? And some of that is position, some of that is range, some of that is just athleticism, and Stubbs is going to bring a lot of those things. Again, I think from a caution perspective, this is not like the number one safety in the country, but it's a major addition to Billy Napier's recruiting class, and somebody who conceivably could contribute in 2025. And there's not a lot of guys in any recruiting class who are gonna contribute right away. And Stubbs is one of those guys, because of need and because of athletic ability, who could be out there pretty quick for the Gators next year.
Yeah, we saw it last year with Jordan Castell. We didn't really expect him to be a freshman who come in and played right away. And maybe you see something very similar play out there. But yeah, certainly big. Bill, just kind of going back to your point. He was a guy that we had targeted early too, though. One of the top safeties right up the road in Jacksonville, and it didn't turn. I mean, the storyline of him is so interesting because, like I say, he committed out of nowhere to USC. It kind of was a dagger in everybody's heart. Now, many people didn't think it would stick, but if he decommitted, it would be to Florida. Well, he decommitted and committed to Miami, so it was kind of another surprise when that happened. But in the end, just a few days before signing day, he's going to end up a Gator.
Well, this is one of the things I've been thinking about recently. I suspect that for guys who are not top tier recruits, that the NIL money is all pretty much the same at this point across the board. That, people kind of have their valuations in terms of what players are. Maybe they go a little bit more for a certain player that they want. And Florida's probably reaping the benefits of that right now, given that, they apparently raised a war chest to be able to go after this class. But if the money is kind of equivalent, then, or at least close to equivalent, then all of a sudden, all the other stuff that we've always associated with recruiting becomes important. So if you're a kid from Jacksonville and you watch DJ Lagway play and you go, well, I was considering Florida, but they were struggling and the money wasn't equivalent, and USC came out and offered me more than Florida did at the start. Well, when Florida comes up and says, hey, we'll match it, who you choosing? And I think, it used to be one of the things that we always sort of pointed out. I know Bill Sykes used to point this out when he was on the show, is that getting guys from California was always a huge risk. And whenever Florida brought guys over from California, inevitably a year or two later, they were back in California that they had transferred out of Florida. And in many ways, that's just because once you've gotten to where you are, a lot of people are more comfortable going closer to home. So I think some of that is going to happen overall. And I think in this case, obviously the solution is, let's not wait until we lose to Miami to open the season next year to raise $26 or $27 million in the war chest for recruiting, because obviously that has an impact. I don't think anybody's naive enough to believe that's not having an impact here, but it's nice to be on the positive side of that ledger for once in the NIL era. And, I'm not sure that was the main deciding factor for Stubbs, but I'm happy he's part of the class. And if it was the main deciding factor, good, he's a Gator.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we know the storylines for recruiting now, and it's all legal now. So there's no sense in hiding behind the curtain anymore. It's a talking point that is as valid as any of them right now.
Well, I mean, look, I love the health insurance that I have. I absolutely love the 401k. Those are all great things that my company brings to the table. But if they tried to pay me 20 grand a year, I'd be like, I don't care how good your health insurance is. And I don't care what your 401k match is. You're not matching very much. Like, I got 4 kids. I need to feed those people. And so look, it's just like any other job, right? Like the salary is probably the most important thing when it comes to, I mean, there's quality of work and are you going to enjoy where you're at and all those sorts of things. We all make those decisions every day. And just about every one of us out there has left a job because we didn't like the boss, had nothing to do with the pay, had nothing, we would, in fact, might have taken a pay cut to get the heck out of there because, we wanted to be in a better environment. But there have been a lot of people who have been stuck in really crappy environments because the pay was really good. Just go talk to anybody who's been a lawyer for a couple of years. Half those people end up not being a lawyer not too long afterwards. There's a reason for that. It's so crucible when you get into those sorts of places. And so I don't anticipate college football is going to be any different at this point. There's going to be an environmental aspect that kids are going to look at. And if the money is close to equivalent, then all of a sudden, all the culture stuff that Billy Napier is talking about and has talked about ever since he came to Gainesville becomes really, really important. If the money is considerably different, though, okay, well, culture's nice, but I have a family to feed, and people are going to make those sorts of decisions. So I think what we're really seeing is that the cultural aspect of what Billy Napier's been able to build becomes a real selling point once you have those NIL dollars to back everything up. And so the sort of the complete picture is starting to hit with some of these recruits. Look, there's still another step up in recruiting to go, and we need to be honest about that. But man, it sure is nice to see all these flips heading towards Gainesville instead of like it did last year, where the week before National Signing Day, or early signing day, everybody was going to Miami. Now we're pulling, and Florida State. Now, Norvell may be pointing at Napier, but all the recruits are going our way.
Pointing with 2 fingers, by the way. What is that all about? But
he should have got a 15-yard penalty, man. like Pickens for the Steelers.
Yes, I mean, I'm dizzy from all the flips, Will. I mean, Dizzy Dave here. That's what, now I was called that in college for other reasons, but.
We still call you that for Florida, Georgia week.
For sure. But for sure, I mean, we'll get into it in just a second. But with this latest commitment, we'll up to 10th on the 24/7 Sports Composite. 23 commits now for the Gators just after this massive haul. And just the run lately. Let's go through it one more time. Just the last couple of weeks that consist of defensive lineman Joseph Mbachu, who flipped from Texas yesterday. Offensive lineman Tavares Dias flipping from Auburn over the weekend. Edge rusher Jaden Woods from Penn State. Running back Byron Lewis. Offensive lineman Daniel Pierre-Lewis. Quarterback Tremel Jones, all from Florida State. Linebacker Ty Jackson from USC. Wide receiver Muez Tenkara from Arizona. Offensive lineman Jahari Medlock from Cincinnati. All these guys over the last couple of weeks and getting them to flip. And I hit on this a little bit yesterday on the episode. Flip from schools that are in the college football playoff, fighting for college football playoff spots, schools in your footprint, rivals. I mean, these flips have it all right now the last couple of weeks for the Gators.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, though, that I've seen is what I said earlier, is that a bunch of them are from Florida.
Yeah.
And so you talk about Stubbs from Jacksonville. I mean, just look at Florida's overall recruiting class. You got Vernell Brown from Orlando, Hilton Stubbs from Jacksonville, Ben Hanks from Miami. You got Ty Jackson from Loxahatchee. Then you got Jaden Woods from Kansas. Then you got Jalen Wiggins, Tallahassee, Nashawn Montgomery, Miami. Tavares Dice is from Fairborn, Georgia. Byron Louis is from Fort Lauderdale. Tremel Jones is from Jacksonville. Mbachu is from Loganville, Georgia. Waltez Clark is from Tampa. Tashawn Gelsey is from Jacksonville. Jeremiah Cloud is from Leesburg. I mean, you're getting basically through all the 4-stars, all the blue chips, and just about all of them are from the state.
Yep.
And so
11 from Florida, 4 from Georgia.
Yeah. So, I mean, Billy Napier has managed to build inroads in places where some of the other guys have failed before. Like, there's been a lot of sort of Florida filling in the gaps for Florida's recruiting classes over the past, 9-10 years, where they would sort of go out and cast wide nets and bring in high level recruits from other places. And then they would fill in the back with guys from Florida, is what it kind of felt like. These are some elite recruits from Florida that everybody else wants. And so, for Billy Napier to be able to keep those guys home, particularly the Jacksonville area, like that is a place that if Florida is going to win, then they have to win Jacksonville in recruiting. And right now they're winning Jacksonville in recruiting. Kind of started with with Pup Howard coming back home from South Carolina. But certainly, the Jacksonville area has been a place where Florida has really been able to hit hard over the last year, and that's all they've really been able to do since then.
Yeah, Trayon Webb, Sharif Denson, Jack Pyburn. I mean, a lot of your, of course, you mentioned Pup Howard. I mean, Jaden Robinson right outside the Jacksonville area, Lake City. I mean, there's a lot of guys in the area who have certainly made a huge impact. And I remember looking at that for Florida-Georgia game. It was, Carson Beck being from Jacksonville at the quarterback spot for Georgia, but then you had so many Jacksonville guys on Florida's defense that were making impact. So a lot of Jacksonville love in Florida, Georgia, and certainly able to continue it here. And hopefully not done, Will. Of course, Solomon Thomas, the offensive lineman from Reigns, 5-star offensive lineman committed to FSU. Certainly an LSU Florida battle looking like LSU Florida battle, it looks like in these next couple of days. Jamie French, the receiver, getting Stubbs absolutely helps there. Will it be enough to flip him from Texas? I mean, those are the two major storylines in the next couple of days. We got a pretty good inclination that Lagonza Hayward may be, flipping from Tennessee to Florida. Another safety would give Florida two really good safeties if that one that happens, of course. So, certainly that's the top of the board. Look, Florida's not going to be taking too many anyway. You're not going to be reaching here, I don't think, to finish out this class. We'll see if there's any decommitments or any flips away from Florida in the next couple of days. But I mean, Jacksonville is still going to be in the under the microscope here in the next couple of days as we count down days till early signing day.
Yeah. So first off, you don't have to reach when you've got $20-something million in your pocket. No need to reach at that point. I do think
a transfer portal class coming up.
So look, I'm thrilled that Florida's bringing in all these recruits. I'm thrilled that they're flipping them from rivals. I think Florida State gives a unique opportunity for Florida in this particular moment to really go in and sort of raid the cabinets. Because if you think about Florida State, they have some financial issues that are going on, not just with Norvell, but with the ACC and all the other stuff that's going on there. And you have a 2-10 season where Florida just went in and whipped them. And I think that opens up a unique opportunity for a guy like Solomon Thomas. And so the question is Florida set up to be able to close the deal? Because this class is very good. I would liken it to Napier's bump class in 2023. Yeah, the 2023 class, where it had a lot of mid-level talent, but not a lot of top-tier talent. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now with this one. The average player rating right now with Stubbs is 90.37. It's at 268 points. That has been an average over the last 6 years. That's been an average of 12th is the finish in 24/7 Sports. So if they don't have anybody else, they're probably going to finish around 12th. So they're 10th right now, but some of the teams that are around them haven't finished out their classes too. So all the point totals are going to go up. Florida's probably going to need to add a couple of players to do that. If they get Hayward, they're going to be at 273, which is right around 10th. So that's where they'll finish on a point perspective, and 90.6 overall in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Now, if they add Solomon Thomas to that, now they're at 281 or almost 282, and 282 has been about 7th. So now you're talking about like an LSU range in terms of where you're recruiting. You're still not at Georgia, still not at Alabama, still not at Ohio State, but now you're getting to an LSU range. That's a significant step up for Florida. So that 1 5-star, whether it's Jamie French, whether it's Solomon Thomas, whether it's Dallas Wilson, from an overall points perspective, that's where we're really talking about. If I look overall at the class, I would say there's probably about 4 draftable players that are going to come out of this one. That's what you would expect. Obviously, if you've got better development, you're going to end up with a few more than that. But 4 is kind of what I expect from the class as it sits right now, given some historical norms. And interestingly, so 90.6 is where they'd be if Hayward commits. Dan Mullen's 4 classes averaged 90.69. So we're not really upgrading too far from a talent perspective there, unless they start signing some of these elite 5-star guys. Obviously, the portal gives you a completely different avenue to improve your team, something that definitely was not, or at least was in its infancy when Dan Mullen was here. And we'll see how Florida uses the NIL funds and the different things that are out there to sort of supplement the holes that are existing on the roster. But Florida is in a position to be able to close very, very strongly. We'll see whether they can get it done, because this class, because of the slow start, it's exciting to see all these guys committing and flipping, but we're not done yet. like in terms of having a complete recruiting class. And I think we need to say that. Now, this is sort of, it puts Florida in a grouping with like the Auburns and the A&Ms and the LSUs of the world, Georgia and Alabama sort of a class above. And that's really where you want to head to. And the hope is over the next couple of years with combining the transfer portal and the magic of DJ Lagway that all of a sudden, and the magic of having all that buyout money around, that you're going to be able to get up in that class. And we'll see if he can do it, because I think that is going to be the test of Napier. Is DJ Lagway, it seems like, 4-0 in games that he started and finished. I think most Gators fans, and obviously we're biased, but most Gator fans think that we would have given Georgia a significantly better run for its money if he'd have been able to stay in that game. I'm not sure he would have done much against Texas, but 4-0 when he started and finished a game. If he can get you, not necessarily that kind of magic, but if he can get you 9-3, 10-2 with the talent that he's got around you, and now you can start supplementing these classes with more and more talent, then you got a real opportunity to turn Lagway into long-term success within the program. And I think that's something that Gator fans should be excited about. And, it's been a while since we've been excited about recruiting. And so it's nice to see these coming, but also, most of the guys in the 2025 class are not going to be major contributors in 2025. Right. So it's exciting that we've got these guys here. It's exciting that Florida is a place to be, that it seems to be a destination for a lot of different recruits. Hopefully that continues into the 2026 class. But the reality is that for 2025 and what Florida needs to do, it's probably transfer portal more oriented than recruiting. And so, we always say, or you always say, never a dull moment. And we're about to see that when the portal opens up, 3 to 4 days after the early signing day. No rest for the weary. Napier's going to be doing a lot during these, he's got all these bowl practices to mind, but hopefully that doesn't help Norvell.
Yeah, he even come out and said, Napier said, look, we're not using all 15 practices. He goes, I think the team would kill me if I told them we're practicing 15 more times. Especially in this condensed window, you probably don't really need it. But a couple storylines in the chat and on Gators Breakdown Plus as well. I've heard it a couple places now. Joshua Moore, the former Gator commit at wide receiver, might be more in play now. Is committed to Miami. So he would add about a couple more points, I think. We're looking at that. We put Florida at 9th if you just put him in the class now on the calculator. That's what I was doing just a second ago. So bump up a little bit there. And in the chat too, I know we talked about this right before we came on here. Take the kicker and the punter away from the class. Yes, the class average would certainly go up. This one was funny too, because I was going to say something very similar. Casual Carolina Fishing says, I don't know why, but I feel better about a 90.6 class awaited by Billy more than I do about a 90.6 class by Mullen. First of all, most of the guys will probably make it to campus, so we can put that one in there. Get the feeling there. But yeah, so, really, the next couple of days really should be a whole lot of fun.
So I refuse to remove the punter and the kicker from the equation for two reasons. One is we've never done that before, so we shouldn't do that now. But the bigger reason is that Florida special teams have been such a disaster outside of this year that I can't take that for granted. And I know it hasn't necessarily always been the kicker and the punter who've been the problem in those particular cases, but those guys matter. And so, having good guys at that position, scholarship level players, to where you're not like having open tryouts like some of the other teams around the country. I mean, heck, the Ravens can't make a field goal right now. And, they would kill for Trey Smack right now up there in Baltimore, given what they're seeing from Justin Tucker. So that's an important thing. And I don't think we want to overlook it. I think obviously you want to understand that does drag that number down. At the same time, I mean, look, Alabama needs kickers, Georgia needs kickers, like that stuff all exists. The difference there is that, I mean, if you look at those teams, Alabama's got 4 or 5 5-stars coming in. Georgia's got 4 or 5 5-stars coming in. The difference between those top tier teams in the recruiting and Florida right now are those truly elite prospects. And, so Georgia has 5 5-stars. Alabama has 4. Ohio State has 3. Texas has 4. That's where Florida wants to go. And LSU has 2. So like I said, if they get Thomas in the mix, they will have a class that ranks very close to where LSU is right now. Look, LSU's won national championships when they've gotten good play at quarterback. But I mean, they needed Burrow to put up a Heisman year to win the national championship. Now, half that team got drafted too, but that defense wasn't very good that year, and Burrow took advantage of it. They end up with Jaden Daniels coming in the transfer portal, still go 10-3 because the defense can't stop anybody. So, if you're telling, I know a lot of people are going to look at wide receiver when it comes to the portal. They're going to get excited about the toys that Billy Napier puts around DJ Lagway. I'm not sure he needs real significant toys on the outside. I think it would be nice, but I don't know that he needs that. I think Florida needs some guys who can lay the wood at safety, corner, linebacker, and defensive line to replace some of the guys who are going to be leaving, and quite honestly, to upgrade some of those spots on the defense as well. Because you look at the overall statistics.
I think we're good at linebacker, but the other spots, I will completely agree with you.
Well, we shall see, man. I don't think if you have an opportunity to upgrade at any defensive position, like if you asked me wide receiver or safety, wide receiver or corner, even wide receiver or linebacker, I'd tell you defense, because I think DJ Lagway has the ability to make decent receivers look good. He'll make good receivers look great. And if you have, I mean, Clay Kubelik showed the behind perspective. I think you retweeted it.
Yeah, Cole Kubelik, yeah.
Where Lagway threw a ball that only DK could catch after he rolled out of the pocket, and it's funny because it was a night where Lagway was off.
Yeah,
but it was a gorgeous throw, and he's just like, "Are you kidding me?" And so he's going to throw some people open. So I would love to have all sorts of toys at the wide receiver position. Look, if folks like Jeremiah Smith want to transfer from Ohio State, I think you say yes. Like I'm not going to say, "Oh no, we shouldn't." No. What, you don't think he's going to transfer?
Oh no! I was joking. We wouldn't take him. No, we'll let him stay there.
I mean, so I think you don't say no if you've got an elite wide receiver who wants to come, but I think if all things are equal and if money is tight, and who knows how it's going to end up, as we get closer to the finish line on these things, defense is the place that I hope they'll focus. And honestly, if you look at the recruiting class, this specific recruiting class, you start to see that as well. Florida has put a heavy emphasis on defense, particularly at the top of the recruiting class. And, for good reason, given what we've seen for the past, 5, 6, 7 years there on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously better this year, but still a ways to go.
Absolutely. So good stuff there on the recruiting trail. We'll keep it up the next couple of days, see what's going on there. Big storylines to be watching heading into Wednesday and early signing day. So, I went post game. I know you had an episode as well, but let's take a look back at the Florida State game. Biggest takeaways for you? I mean, you kind of mentioned Lagway there and his quote unquote off night. For him, it wasn't off night. There were some throws missed, and for a variety of reasons, definitely different. Protection, him being off, a drop. I mean, it could be one thing or another, leading to Lagway's numbers for the night. But all in all, as you said earlier, cannot just overlook going to Tallahassee, getting a win over your rival, ending the season on a high note. But looking at the game itself, run game does its thing in the second half. Montreal Johnson way to close out his career at Florida with a big run. But the defense up front once again, and some timely, helpful turnovers by Florida State. But it was all in all just good to go to Tallahassee and get that win.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to take a win against Florida State for granted, but this is a bad Noles team. And with Kromenhoek there at quarterback, this was a really bad Florida State team. I mean, this was like reminiscent of the Skylar Morenweg 2013 Gator team when he's out there. And you're just like, the offense is completely
stagnant.
Gator
team minus 13.
Well, I mean, maybe so. But we barely covered in this one. I was sitting there going, are we really not going to cover in this stupid game as we're looking at it? Mainly because I was 5-5 on my picks for the year. And I'm like, come on, get me above 500 for the cover. So I didn't think that. So I thought Florida State was awful. I thought Kromenhoek was really bad. I thought that Florida's defense was obviously swarming, but still had some times where you're like, okay, there's some openings there. I thought the fumbles really set up the points, especially the opening touchdown that allowed Florida to go up 7-0. Lagway missed Burke on a really easy throw where the field was like wide open in front of him really early in the game, threw it behind him. And it was like, okay. And then he missed Badger on a pretty easy throw on a slant in the end zone. That would have put him up significantly, would have really put the game away. And Florida had to settle for a field goal to make it 17-3. And look, if Florida State doesn't drop the ball at like the 3-yard line on a little pitch when it's 17-3, the game's a lot closer. Now, credit to Florida for taking that next drive and all of a sudden, busted out. Montreal Johnson puts the game away. I mean, at that point, once it was 24-3, you're like, all right, Florida State has no shot to come back. But this really was like, hey, we have a machine gun and they have a paintball gun. Like, maybe we'll come out of it with a couple of bruises, but that guy ain't coming out alive. And that's kind of what it felt like in this one, is that Florida State was just completely overmatched and outmanned. Now, I think this tells us that Florida does have the ability to beat a team when their quarterback doesn't play very well.
Yeah.
Because I thought Lagway played poorly in a lot of different ways, a lot of different metrics.
A lot of people brought up 2 years ago against Vandy. That was a game, Florida lost. Last year against Arkansas, inexcusable team. You don't lose that game at home. I mean, Florida has had that game in the last couple of years, and this one could have set up. But no, you didn't play your best game, and you still went and won. Florida had lost that game in the past couple of years.
Well, the other thing is, and this was what had me sort of hedging, and I wound up picking Florida big when in my preview. But the thing that had me hedging was that Florida had to get up emotionally for 4 straight weeks, right? That Georgia game took a lot out of them. The Texas game, you could kind of tell if the Georgia game took a lot out of them, especially with essentially Aiden Warner was kind of like Kromenhoek, right? Like no real prayer once they got down by 14, and so everything just sort of fell apart from there. The LSU game, obviously a very emotional win. You got Napier getting emotional at the back end after Ole Miss. I mean, he was about to break down at the end of that one. Like you could hear his voice cracking and that sort of stuff. And so not just the team, but the coach had a ton of emotion riding on those sorts of things. So you go on the road, it's against a rival, but the rival's kind of down. You sense that they're wounded. And I think, like, I can understand why people would go, you sense they were wounded, kill them, versus you sense they were wounded and you just didn't quite have that edge. So, I get it. But still, I mean, a 20-point win against your rival, you don't, like, I say this about SEC wins all the time when Florida beats like Mississippi State or used to beat Vanderbilt, or even now, the win against Kentucky. Like, Kentucky wasn't a great team, but that's one of those where you look at it and go, an SEC win is a quality win. Like, you look at Ole Miss, they're going to miss the playoffs because they lost to Kentucky and Florida. And so those sorts of things are like, when you play in the SEC, it's a quality win. I wouldn't say Florida State's a quality win at this point, but it's a name, right? It's one of those things where, no one's going to look and say, well, Florida was ducking people because they brought in a poor non-conference schedule. Florida's kind of got lucky this year. So I will say, Florida still ends up at the end of the game averaging 6.1 yards per play. Yeah. So the offense still pretty good overall. I think. And
you just take that knowing it was an off night. Kind of like you said, off night, but 6.1 yards. I mean.
Well, but this is one of those things, is you're going to have off nights along the way. Like, you think about the Alabama teams that have won national championships, there's always been an escape. Like, there's been one game where they've had to escape. You think about even the Florida teams under Urban Meyer. I mean, the Ole Miss game where they didn't escape, but they're able to then recover and blow everybody out from then on. The 2006 team has the cock block and the
Auburn lost that year.
The Auburn lost, and the fake, though that still wasn't a fumble on Leak's throw.
Yeah.
But you got the cock block, you got the fake punt against Arkansas. You've got all those different things that sort of factor into those special seasons. And like, DJ Lagway's not perfect. He certainly has areas to grow. But the belief that he's brought to the team overall, and I'll say this, for as bad as he was, his best drive was the one at the end of the half when Florida went up 14-0. And once they were up 14, you pretty much knew the game was over, right? Yeah. And he's got that knack. Like, he did it against Tennessee. He looked awful the entire second half, and then bam, when they needed it, all of a sudden he throws the tie-in touchdown pass. He has an opportunity to hit a big one against Georgia. He hits it real early. Obviously, unfortunately, he gets injured in that one. LSU, they're coming around the edges. He steps up in the pocket, hits Badger down to the 1, sets up Florida to go up by 7. And Ole Miss as well, right? He hits the throw to DK, even though he was having a rough second half, and all of a sudden is able to put Florida in position. So Florida's offense right now is very feast or famine. That is absolutely true. I would liken this offense to what we kind of saw with Anthony Richardson back in 2022. That Richardson would deliver big explosive plays, and then he'd have a guy wide open on a crosser, and he'd throw it 16 feet over his head. And you'd be like, where what was going on there? Like how do we miss the easy one? And I think Lagway still misses the easy one sometimes. And we saw, especially because Florida State plays a ton of cover 2, because Florida State plays a ton of zone, and they actually played more zone than they normally do in this one. They made it tough for him. And so Lagway's going to have to find some solutions to that. If you asked me the most important part of the next 15 practices or the time that they're spending, I think it's more important to have Lagway in the film room than it is to have him on the field. I mean, obviously you're going to get his throws in and going to get that sort of stuff, but Napier doesn't have to use the 15 practices to utilize this time, because the coaches get coaching time with the players every week, right? It's not necessarily always on the field that's critical. Sometimes it's actually having the time in the film room, the time to be able to work with somebody on stuff that, quite honestly, when you were game planning for Ole Miss, you didn't have time to sit there and break out the nuances of, this guy's lined up on the hashes, and so this tells you what you're going to see here post snap, or, you need to watch this safety specifically in this case. Like, you start looking at tendencies, start breaking down film, and he's going to figure that stuff out. But Pat Mahomes went through this when he came to the NFL. He was chucking it all over the place deep. And then all of a sudden, defenses started making him dink and dunk down the field. And the guy's only won Super Bowls since defenses started making him do that, because he had to adjust. But he did have a season where he threw a bunch of interceptions because he wasn't patient enough to sort of take what the defense was giving him. I think Lagway's still sort of in those circumstances. Even the great plays, like the one where he almost got sacked and he shook off the guy and then his DK going down the field. One of the reasons he's getting sacked, because I'll have to go back and look, but I'm almost certain that on that play, he had a running back for a little dump-off pass who would have been like 8-10 yards. Real easy play, right? Doesn't get hit, doesn't have to shake the defender. Now, it's really impressive when he shakes the defender and throws a dart downfield. But eventually he's going to learn, the running back's right over there. I'm just going to check it down. We're going to get 8 yards. I'm going to live to see the next play. And when he does that, oh boy, the offense is going to be averaging 7 yards a play rather than 6, and so we'll have a little bit more. We'll have a little bit more margin on the back end when it comes to the defense.
Yeah, I mean, so there we go. So finishing in the season 7-5, Will. That's the final record for the Gators. Let me pull it up. So I'll go hear from Billy Napier too. I'll go back to his post game. And what he had to say after the big win versus FSU. We'll hear from that and kind of do a little season recap, put a bow on the season.
For you guys are clinching your first winning season since 2020. Just that step in the program, considering maybe even where you were just 3 weeks ago to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think mid-season is when it all kind of came together. I think the players did a good job of kind of putting their blinders on in the first month, and didn't allow excuses, didn't allow blame, and really just went back to work. Go back to that first open date, and I think that Tennessee game was pivotal. The way they responded to that. So, just in general, good to have some momentum. And I thought we took advantage. I mean, that was the mission was to capture the momentum that we had tonight. I thought we did that.
How have you seen the guys, you talk about one-day contracts, one-game contracts, how have you seen them just handle positivity and be able to keep this momentum?
I thought, I think we got a pretty mature group. I think they've fed off the energy. We're not to that point yet. We haven't done it enough to where it becomes, I think we're addicted. They like it. They want to do it more. We're at that point, right? So, I've been places where we win 26 in a row, and it starts to wear off on the other end, and you have to crack the whip all the time. But we don't have that issue right now. They're hungry. They like what they've experienced. The LSU game, the Ole Miss game, obviously tonight.
Billy, you've not made excuses about all the injuries this year, but how gratifying is it to finish with a winning record despite the numerous injuries you've had, so many of them to key players?
Well, look, I think some of our issues were when we had a full roster, right? So, there's no excuse for the first month of the season, and we had everybody healthy at that point. So, but I think to your point is a good one in that the depth of the team proved to be valuable. I mean, we got 2 rookie DBs out there playing tonight. Greg Smith and Jameer Grimsley are out there. So, yeah, I think next man up, big time in special teams. I think we have a lot of players that have played different roles. But, yeah, the running back group, I think, has stepped up when we had a few guys banged up in the secondary. And obviously the quarterback dynamic, for a true freshman to play the way DJ's played down the stretch, to keep getting better.
Right guard.
Yeah, and I think Lovett, Waits. But, yeah, I think ultimately – and you play our schedule, you play in this league, you got to have depth. And there's always going to be critical pieces of the puzzle that got to play good ball for you down the stretch, right? So, and look, I'm hopeful that in the future here, we still got a couple games left, right? So we're learning that depth of your roster is really important. And you go into a playoff, you imagine playing a conference championship game and then playing a playoff game. So we have to continue to add good players to the team, and we got to develop those players all throughout the offseason so when we do need them, they're ready.
Well, one of my biggest takeaways from there was the full admission of, hey, look, even when we had everybody healthy, we didn't do we didn't do things right with the beginning of the season. So the full admission there was, hey, injuries. It's nice we overcame them, but when we were fully healthy, we did not put our best foot forward. So as you mentioned, look, everything changed that first bye week, and look, you just heard Stubbs, say Florida's building something special, and that came with the late season surge here. So, look back through the season, 7-5, and you had the loss of Miami, returning home after that too to get the win over Stanford, and the loss of Texas A&M, sitting at 1-2, and all the hot seat talk is just everywhere. National, local, every article, every podcast that was out there. The reports, ESPN reporting it too. The boosters raised the money to buy out Billy Napier. So, it wasn't just narratives that were made up. Everything was out there pointing towards, this was not heading in the right direction. Get that win over Mississippi State 45-28 to go into that first bye week Billy Napier's talking about, and things change. Players and coaches come together and figure out what needs to be fixed, especially on the defensive side of the football. Ron Roberts moving up to the booth, Austin Armstrong on the sideline, a more basic approach on defense, changing some things up, get better as the season goes on up front on defense. But, return. Will, do you remember coming out of that bye week? And I remember when the season started, I remember that bye week that UCF was going to come and take over the swamp. They end up, Gus Malzahn is now the OC at FSU just weeks later there, Florida getting that win coming there. And then Billy Napier also really lends a lot of credit to the way the team performed at Tennessee. A game coulda, shoulda, woulda won there for the Gators. And hey, look, one of my bigger games coming into the season was just Kentucky, because it's given us a pretty good indication of how a Florida team would look. Go and just destroy Kentucky with DJ Lagway starting 48-20, then get that second bye week. Georgia coulda, shoulda, woulda if Lagway doesn't go down. 34-20 loss there. And then things didn't look great on the road at Texas. Of course, Aiden Warner starting that game, fighting through injuries. And it wasn't an indication of how the team would finish out the season, of course. The 3 straight wins, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State, for the Gators to get to 7-5. Well, it's been a roller coaster, man. We've been here every Monday night talking about this team and all the storylines surrounding it. It's been a fun season to cover. Certainly made more fun by the finish here. 7-5, a defense that has transformed, an offense that got explosive under DJ Lagway. Been a whole lot of fun, but as that late season surge really building some momentum for the Gators on the field, off the field, in recruiting. We'll see where it takes Florida, but sounds like Billy Napier, giving a whole lot of credit, just kind of how this team, the staff, the program, just kept at it, didn't listen to all the noise for the Gators to end up 7-5.
Yeah, I think Billy Napier deserves a lot of credit for where Florida is. I think there's certainly still things that you can say about clock management and about roster management that you're going to criticize, or I'm going to criticize, and that's fair. At the same time, 7-5 coming into this year, we would have taken it. I think there really is a before Lagway and after Lagway effect when you look at the schedule, right? I think it really pops out at you when you look at it. Now, certainly, 13, 17, 20, 20, or you start looking at the point totals that Florida's defense gave up, and there was a major improvement there too. But Florida's 7-5 overall, 4-0 in games Lagway starts and finishes, 3-5 in games that he doesn't. Mertz was awful in the game against Miami. Lagway awesome in the games against Samford and Kentucky. Tennessee was sort of Lagway getting his feet wet, and then he goes out against Kentucky, is just otherworldly, gets injured against Georgia, and then on one leg plays really, really well against LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. Not Florida State, he played pretty poorly in that one, played really well against LSU and Ole Miss. So in many ways, I think that this is something where the belief in the quarterback position makes a big difference. And Graham Mertz has contributed a lot to this Florida program, contributed a lot to DJ Lagway being able to take over and being prepared to take over. At the same time, Lagway is the future of the program, and he proved that. So, I'm always talking about the way you build programs is through wins and hope. And those last 3 games of the year, I think, give us a lot. I mean, even one loss in that space makes us feel a lot different about this team. Certainly all the young players, I expect Florida to go to a bowl game and have just about everybody there. And that'll be a welcome alternative to what we've seen a few of these years, when they went and played a full squad for Central Florida a few years ago, or when they played a full squad for Oklahoma and they're going in there with a skeleton crew of their own team. They're not going to have to do that this year. And so the 15 practices, the film studies, all that sort of stuff, but just the bowl game in general to build momentum into 2025 is going to be there. Now, here's what I'll also say, though, is that there's a huge jump from 7-5 to 10-2 with this particular schedule, because it's the same schedule next year. You just flip home and road, right? And so, Florida was 2-5 in games against teams in the top 17 of the ESPN FPI. You can use AP poll, you can use college football ranking, but really the story is 2-5 against teams in the top 20. Now, Ole Miss and LSU are the most recent ones in the top 20, and they were able to take those guys down. The question will be, can they ride that momentum? Because you're going to need to go 5-2 against those 7 teams next year. Maybe it'll switch a little bit. Maybe Miami will have a down year because Cam Ward leaves, but Ole Miss will probably have an up year, right? And you're going to end up with 6 or 7 teams in the top 20 overall. Florida's going to have to go 4-2, 5-2 in those games, because what we've seen so far is that generally to get in the playoff, at least to guarantee yourself a playoff, you got to go 10-2. And so the difference between 5-7 from last year and 7-5 this year is a significant step for Florida and the Florida program, but it's a really big step to go playoffs. And the reality is, you got 2 years of Lagway. And so you have to be nipping at the heels of the playoff the next 2 years. Otherwise, in my mind, it's a failure. Like, you've got to build on what you have right now. Just going out and beating the Ole Misses and the LSUs of the world next year isn't going to cut it. You've sort of set expectations. You can compete with those teams, and just competing with Texas and Georgia and A&M and Tennessee and Miami isn't going to be enough either. You got to go 4-2 in those games, or 5-2 in those games. If you tick off the top 20 teams that they played this year, Texas, Georgia, A&M, Tennessee, Miami, Ole Miss, and LSU, they need to go 5-2 in those games next year to get where Florida needs to go. And, I think with Lagway behind center, they have an opportunity to do it. Obviously, we'll see what they're able to fill in with the transfer portal for some of the guys who are leaving. And we'll also see who returns, right? Because I think there's some opportunities for guys like Tyreek Sapp. Is
Caleb Banks.
Caleb Banks. Are those guys going to come back, or have they made themselves enough money that they're going to go pro? And so we'll see what holes need to be filled. But Lagway, in many ways, you just look at that, like I said, before Lagway and after Lagway, the hope that he brings to the program, but the play that he brought to the program in most of these games. Like, I was surprised when he played poorly against Florida State, because he hasn't done that since the Tennessee game. And it's like every time he's had a chance to start, he's been fantastic. So this is the first time we saw where he was the clear guy who was going to start the game, where he struggled. And so I don't expect
first true road start.
Yeah, well, and he wasn't real good at Tennessee either. And so now, let's be honest, Dave, there wasn't much noise there in Tallahassee.
No. But still, it's not your friendly confine. I'm not saying Florida State's crowd got him or anything like that. It's just, you're just not in the friendly confines of your of the swamp.
Well, and again, your true freshman should have times that he struggles.
Yeah.
Like, struggling is an opportunity to get better. If he came in and already was chucking the ball all over the place and never made a mistake, obviously the interceptions need to be cut down on quite a bit. It'd be nice if his receivers ran the correct routes. That was not his fault in the Florida State game. But, so I think he would tell you he needs to play better than he did.
I read the press conference. Napier even said it too. Hey, look, he missed some throws. We all love Lagway. It doesn't mean he's above criticism when we're discussing what we're discussing there. So yeah, absolutely. And my bad, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
Yeah.
so I think, but that's what I'm pointing at. Is I'm pointing at the season in review for me is an indication of how far the team has come, and that's significant. And both Lagway and Napier deserve a ton of credit for that. And you could throw Roberts in there if you want as well. I do think that the move that he learned at Baylor, because he was not like this before he went and worked with Dave Aranda. And Dave Aranda played a ton of middle of the field open coverages, a ton of coverage, and then come up and tackle and basically allow teams to screw up. And it turns out that until you start playing elite quarterbacks, and even sometimes when you do play elite quarterbacks, if you just make them go underneath, they will eventually make a mistake.
It's college football. These are not professional teams. So.
Well, and this honestly is the real Lagway advantage. So with Graham Mertz, you could sit in those zone coverages, and he might pick you apart. But you could sort of count on Florida getting a false start or a holding penalty or something along the way that would put them in a situation where all of a sudden they're not able to convert and they would have to punt. And so the offense, I would say, was extraordinarily good from a success rate perspective, but not good from an explosion standpoint. Lagway is the complete opposite, at least he has been this year, is the minute you give him an opportunity to take that deep shot, he does, and he's successful. And so Florida probably isn't all that successful in the underneath type of stuff. So there's a lot of 3 and outs. There's a lot of times where you feel like the offense is stagnant, but then all of a sudden, bam, 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 and Florida's just put up 7 points, 14 points, 21 points. And so I think there's a lot to build on there, but I think it's also antithetical to the way most teams have to play. Like if you look at that Ohio State game against Michigan, they were extraordinarily limited at the quarterback position compared to where Florida is right now. And that's the thing that gets me excited is if Florida has to play Will Howard and Ohio State next year, Florida's going to have an advantage at the quarterback position. I have no doubt in my mind. And there's only a few programs and a few players who you're not going to be able to say that about for Florida next year. And let's be honest, when you got the better quarterback, you almost always win. And so that's the expectation is they're going to have to flip some of these games. Hopefully, Carson Beck is back for Georgia. I can't imagine he's going to be drafted. So, he's going to be back.
He's not back. He's going.
No, you think he's gone?
Yes.
Well, who are they going to replace him with?
Jaden Rashada.
So Florida will have an advantage at the quarterback position against Georgia.
He's Gunnar Stockton is going to be the guy. But.
It's time to go win that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't care who it is.
Look, Texas is going to have Manning playing quarterback, and granted, though, that one will be in the swamp, and so that's one where, depending upon how Arch Manning plays, Florida might not have an advantage there. But A&M, they're going to have an advantage at quarterback. Tennessee. We'll see how Nico develops, but that should be an area where they have an advantage. Miami with no Cam Ward, we'll see who they bring in, but they should have an advantage there. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart's gone, so you're talking Austin Simmons again. I think Florida should have an advantage there. And LSU, we all know how I feel about Nussmeyers. And, I know Todd McShay has him as like the 4th overall, or Mel Kiper has him as the 4th overall draft pick, but we shall see. I guess he'll probably go to the draft, but I'm not really – I'm guessing Brian Kelly's going to struggle to replace him. At least I don't think they're getting Jaden Daniels level production. So Florida should have an advantage at the quarterback position. It's time to go 5-2. Time to make the playoff. That's the expectation in 2025. Let's go, man.
I mean, based on SEC quarterbacks that have played, when you look at the SEC next year, you're going to go Lagway, and I ain't saying in any order because they'll throw it around. Lagway, Lenore Sellers, Arch Manning, and oh Lord, who was the 4th one? Nico.
I was going to say Brock Vandegrift. Who are you looking for here?
But for guys who have played some snaps, and Arch nowhere near as much as the other guys, but he's played enough this year to know. And plus, he's Arch Manning. But he's I'm throwing some guys who have played some snaps. Those will be your top 4 guys returning next year. So you played. You play 2 of them, so it really is gonna be interesting. Now we'll see. Georgia, I'm sure they'll feel comfortable about who they go get and stuff in conference. But yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Well, we're also going to have Lagway with 2 good legs. So
that is true too.
Maybe keep the band on so he doesn't cut, so he doesn't have problems throughout the year. But
I saw Clayton put it in here too. Texas A&M quarterback's pretty good. Marcel Reed. I don't know. I don't know if they stay with him.
He's not Lagway. I think that's really.
Oh yeah, the 4 I named that they're I think are.
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible at the end of next year we're saying DJ Lagway is by far the best quarterback in the SEC.
I'm here for
Gotta
it.
go. So I'm here for it too. I'm just saying that if we're sitting there arguing that Florida should be in front of South Carolina because they're both 9-3 at the end of the year, man, is that going to be disappointing? And certainly if they're up against Bama or Georgia or somebody like that, because Bama is getting some preferential treatment right now when it comes to who's going to be in that college football playoff, and they're going to make it. And I hate it. I hate the expanded playoff. But what that does suggest is that you got a couple of hiccups along the way. So, some of the in-game coaching stuff that we've criticized, some of the play calling stuff that we've criticized. Obviously, there's going to be, I'm sure, renewed calls for Napier to bring in an offensive coordinator, both, I think, to increase sort of some of the imagination in some cases, but also just to allow him to focus more on sort of the in-game execution and those sorts of things. We'll see whether that happens. And certainly if the defense can take another step up, then Florida has an opportunity. I mean, I said this last week. With Lagway in there, Florida's been a top 10 offense when he's been a starter for Florida. Ever since he came in against Kentucky, or ever since the second half against Tennessee, Florida was averaging 6.6 yards per play coming into the Florida State game. Obviously, that's going to go down a little bit, but they were at 6.1 with Lagway in there in that game. So they probably ended up 6.4, 6.5 yards per play, which is like a top 13, top 14 offense in the country. If he takes any sort of step up, now you're talking about a solid top 10, maybe even top 5 offense. You only need a top 20 defense to go 10-2. And so now only need a top 20 defense. We haven't had a top 20 defense in Gainesville since Sean Grenard was around, but there's a distinct possibility for Florida to be able to thread that needle. And kudos to Napier. I didn't think he was going to be able to do it, and it looks like he might have an opportunity to. And I'm here for it. I'm never rooting against my team. I want Napier to do well. I really do. I look at the numbers. I say what I think the numbers are telling me, and it turns out DJ Lagway makes a lot of those things go away, and I'm here for it, man. It's nice to have a star at quarterback and have him here for a while.
Yeah. So we'll say it. Stubbs said it today when he committed to Florida, building something special, and I think that's the way we have felt these last few weeks. DJ Lagway, part of that something special, as Will alluding to right there, and look, hopefully this is the little stretch run on the field, off the field, we look back at in a few years and say, there you go. There it was. That was the time it turned all around. And hey, Will, as you mentioned all season long, hope is very powerful word here in college football. And you know what? You can feel it a good bit in Gator Nation right now.
Yeah, man. I know that I'm perceived as negative. I am negative a lot of times, cynical, whatever, critical, whatever you want to say. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled by the last 3 games. I'm thrilled by the way things have moved on the recruiting trail. There's still work to be done. You are a 7-5 ball club, and that means there's still work to be done. I don't think Billy Napier would say.
Well, he said it exact what I just played. He pretty much said the same thing.
So hopefully the week before the opener against Miami, they treat like the bye week and be ready to go. Because, the thing about Napier this year, the thing that really I think drove most of us nuts, especially early in the year, was, that we sort of expected the team to lose or to learn from coming out in that Utah game two years ago and really not being able to perform. And against Miami, they just weren't able to do it. Now, a lot has changed since then on the defensive side of the ball. I think Florida, quite honestly, wound up, because of injury, having better players on the field, not just a quarterback, but when you think about the defensive backfield, obviously I think Jason Marshall was playing very well. Yeah. But I think guys like DJ Douglas really struggled
the season.
And I would even say, I think Shamar James, Pup Howard, and Jaden Robinson, especially when Pup went down, Robinson was able to come in and really show what he can do at the linebacker position. And then the defensive line started to shine. Right, the defensive line really started, and I would say the defensive line is kind of a lot like Lagway. It's not perfect, but man, when Caleb Banks decides he's going to push his guy back into the quarterback, I highlighted a play in my postseason or my post-game wrap-up for Florida State where Kromenhoek just got buried by the 2 defensive linemen. It was him and Cam Jackson who just drove the offensive lineman back into the quarterback. He had nowhere to go. He couldn't step up. And the defensive ends, I think, get the credit for the sack. But the defensive tackles are the ones who caused it. And Florida, it's been a really, 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 really long time since Florida has had defensive tackles getting a push. And so, talk about that war chest, talk about NIL. Let's make sure that Mr. Banks is incentivized to stay, because it'd be nice to watch him there at defensive tackle for another year. That's for sure.
For sure. All right, 7-5, regular season over. We await the bowl game for the Gators. That should be announced on Sunday as the college football playoff selections are made as well. So that's what we'll be talking about a good bit next week there, Will. As I said, over-unders. I'll do something Sunday night with the bowl game, kind of a quick reaction, but we'll really dive in next Monday with Florida bowl game location and opponent. So
Gasparilla Bowl.
Birmingham, Tampa, Jacksonville seem to kind of be the most thrown around out there. So
pray for Tampa. Max wants it so bad. He was asking me today, like, can we go if it's in Birmingham? I'm like, no. No, we're not going to Birmingham.
Yeah. I like Birmingham for SEC Media Days. For a bowl game, no. So.
I don't mind Birmingham, man, but I will be at my mother-in-law's in Tampa on the 20th.
Right.
And so if the Gasparilla Bowl hits, there's no excuse for me not to be out there doing a couple of thunders with our best buddies there at Harmonic Woods. And I've been told that's not a pleasing thing to my wife, that I'll be doing that, but I'm going to ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Beers above replacement.
Hey, that's the way to go, man. That's the analytics I like on game day.
But sure, we'll see. It should be an exciting matchup either way. It might be Florida versus ACC either way. If it's Gasparilla, could be Virginia Tech, as we've talked about, or the one I've seen here in the Gator Bowl versus Syracuse, who just beat Miami. Hey,
if SMU does the job, do we get Clemson?
That's the one I've been. If it is, I think it probably would have to be the Gator Bowl.
Maybe they wear their purples.
I don't know. I
mean, they'd have to wear their purples, right?
Well, they'd have to. But imagine, okay, if it is Florida Clemson, that's a lot of orange. But if it's Florida Syracuse, which takes us back to the early '90s, but that's a lot of orange and blue. I mean, not a different shade of blue, of course, but.
Well, it'll be interesting to be in Jacksonville and not get barked at.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah. I remember last time, Will Muschamp beating Ohio State when they had their down year before they, before Urban started there.
Yeah. Just let's go get a win, man, wherever it is. Obviously, we all have our
Cam
our
Jackson saying he's
preferences.
play in it, all that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is I feel like for the most part, the guys who've excelled at Florida this year are only going to help their draft placement by playing in the bowl. This isn't something where they've got like definitive top 10, top 20 picks who are sitting out because an injury would kill their value. These are guys who I think have the opportunity to build draft value if they go out and have a dominant performance in one of these bowl games. So, obviously we're all familiar with Caleb Banks, but if he goes out there and just all of a sudden destroys a strong, say, Clemson offensive line, all of a sudden there's more tape out there of a guy who's really come on the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. And you see what he can do when he's fully healthy, when he's not, when he's not on an 8-game SEC stretch towards the end. And, I'm excited to see what he can do based on the confidence that he's built and sort of the ability that he has when he's fully healthy. And none of these guys are fully healthy right now, right? I mean, they all are dinged up. And so, if the game is December 20th or the game's January 2nd, gives them some time to actually heal, which I think means you're going to get a really good performance from the team. So, like I said, it's really nice that we're going to go into a bowl game and it's not like, well, 3/4 of our team is missing. So what's going on in recruiting?
Right. Yeah.
Which is what it's been for every bowl game Florida's been in for years now. I mean, God, that Central Florida game where they lost that game, I mean, it was just miserable, right? So it'll be nice to hopefully the other team has the same thing. So it's a legit game, but if nothing else, hopefully then if it's not that way, then hopefully it's a 52-6 win for the Gators.
Yeah, I see it in the chat, and we'll sign off here. Yeah, Louisville's brought up, of course. Louisville, Syracuse, Georgia Tech maybe as well. So you're kind of second tier ACC teams. Probably what you're looking at right there if Florida gets in a matchup in a bowl game versus an ACC team. So, Will, fun, man. As I said, roller coaster of a season. We've done it here with Gators Breakdown. I just realized I had to count the years. This is the 9th season So next year will be 10 seasons covering these Florida Gators on Gators Breakdown. Doesn't seem like it has been that long. But season number 9 in the books, of course, a bowl game. So it's not completely done. But, of course, these are the guaranteed 12 times together, times that we get together a year. So 7-5 roller coaster of a season, man. Wouldn't want to do it with anybody else, sharing everybody with it Monday night right here with you. But there we go. At least we got some excitement to end the season this time.
Yeah, man. As always, I mean, I talk about it every year. Is you got 12, hopefully 13 of these. Hopefully next year we got 15 of them.
Yeah,
and and we can ring in the new year with with a big time game where and I'm not missing that one. Like I won't fly to the Birmingham Bowl, but I'll fly to freaking Dubai if there's a playoff game going on. So well, hopefully that's what we're looking into. And look, I mean, I've been saying this now for probably 2-3 years, is that when you followed sports long enough, you recognize that the down times make the up times worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, the Florida fan base, I won't say spoiled because that's the wrong word, but I'll say the Florida fan base was extraordinarily fortunate to have the down years be Ron Zook in between the up years of Spurrier and Meyer. And we've wandered through that forest for a while of a bunch of different coaches. And I really do hope that this is that opportunity where now we're going to see Billy Napier make this climb and to get this team back to where it needs to be and back to where it needs to be consistently. And hopefully this is the start of that. Again, I think there's still some things that are open questions. The team needs to improve and there are other things to be done as well. And Napier will admit that as well. But man, considering where we were after that A&M game and even after the Tennessee game where it was like, oh, we scored 3 points in the first half. Really? Like considering where we are, given where we were, it's an awesome place to finish up. And like you said, I share it with you. Wouldn't want to share it with different fans. Wouldn't want to share it with a different host. This is awesome being on here every week. People put the trust in us to come in and talk about their favorite team. And I love doing it and hope to be doing it for a lot of years to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there we go. Hopefully many more wins to come as well. So Will Miles right there at Will Miles SEC. Be sure to check him and Nick Newton out there at Read and Reaction. We'll get back together next Monday night. Not a game review, of course, but as he kind of gave you what we're going to be talking about coming up here on Gators Breakdown. That'll do it for this episode. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscription, all that good stuff. And that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown.